The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with the panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bount. Today and for the following days, our panel will be answering listener emails about a topic which has dominated our mailbag, and I'm sure dominated everyone's thinking. Listener emails from around the world are asking for the panel's take on the recent Zelensky-Trump Oval Office meeting. Our question comes from Renee, who lives in Toulouse, France, and Renee asks, the recent meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky sent shockwaves throughout Europe. It seems like the U.S. is changing sides and aligning itself more with Russia. I know President Macron and British Prime Minister Starmer have tried to broker some more civil conversations with what here in Europe we see as a madman in charge of the U.S. So my question is about NATO and what might be the new world order. Is NATO dead? Can the EU go it alone and help Ukraine win this war?
Well, I think we've said this before. I do believe that the EU can do it alone. Is it going to be harder? Absolutely. Do they have some work to do? Yes. If you listen to the former chancellor and possibly the incoming chancellor of Germany, they've basically come out and said we got to do better. Keir Starmer has said we've got to do better. Macron, all of them, they've said we have got to do better. They are committed to saving Ukraine because in their mind, this is on their doorstep.
I've also heard the statement that they can't do it without U.S. help, which I honestly don't think they're going to get. So
no,
who else?
And again, I think they're going to find themselves to be better off.
I agree with you.
Sometimes when somebody gives you something, you don't like who you have to thank. And right now, the United States is not somebody that I would like to have to thank. The idea that the EU, they're a very powerful bloc, and if they put their mind to it, if they truly put their mind to it. Now, let's remember something, too. Everybody says we need the United States. Ooh, got to have them. Ukraine has stood up to the great Russian bear for 3 years and held them in check. There's nothing to say that if you don't add the British and the French and the Germans and the Poles and all these other European Union countries together, that they wouldn't even do better against the Russian bear. I mean, I think we're putting a little too much emphasis on the United States. These countries have the capacity. They can do it. There are very few countries in the world like Germany that can make manufacturing capacity. Scott brought out from one of the previous podcasts, the capacity of Ukraine to make their own weapons has increased immensely. They can do this. And again, I think we're giving Russia a little bit more credit than we should. The Russians have shown that they're not all that good at this, or their equipment is so old because they've been trying to keep up with the Joneses, which would be the Americans, and haven't been able to do it. So I think the EU can do this. I honestly think that this is a good thing for the EU to get out from under the boot of the Americans and get out of that post-World War II mindset that we're so damn important. We're just another country. Yes, we've got, great trading and all that stuff. But as I said in one of the last podcasts, China's just waiting. China's waiting with open arms. Come to us. And we'll treat you right. We're going to treat you right. Yeah, bro.
One of the big arguments that I keep hearing from the far right people is, Trump's big plan, his master plan, whatever, I guess the 4-dimensional chess he's supposed to be playing, is to split Russia off from China and create an ally from Russia. Meantime, of course, we have lost all our other allies, which I don't see any master plan at all. I just see, Putin, I just think you're so wonderful. What do you think about that? Mark, and what do you think about NATO?
Nah, no. This Russia at the beginning of this had to borrow stuff off of China already, and the Great Fear. And we spoke with this a few years ago. I think in season 2, Russia stood at the precipice of becoming a vassal state of China, and that could only get worse. And if the EU was to combine its power and might, and the United States is not the only one that has power and might. These people have air forces. These people have navies. These people have armies. They have been on the ground with us in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in all of these places, and they have shown themselves to be quite competent. And to basically treat them as if, well, they were just, secondary players. I think you're making a mistake there. I think if you ask the Germans to step up, I think they can. I think the British can step up, as can any of those countries, the French. So this idea of only with America can you do this, I don't buy into it, and I don't think if you listen to the comments made by the head diplomat of the EU, I don't think they think it either. I believe that they're looking at this and saying, yeah, it'd be nice to have the Americans. Yeah, but maybe we don't really need them. And I think that's a good way. And that might be the thing for NATO. Maybe NATO as it sits needs to be revamped. Maybe it'll change once there is no United States into it. And maybe it'll be better because we won't be the ones dictating policy. And I think that might be good for the EU.
So I guess, growing up here in the United States over the period of the Cold War, as we did, we always took a great deal of pride at the president of the United States being the most powerful man in the free world. And I never saw it coming that we wouldn't want to be the most powerful country in the free world or have our president be the most powerful man in the free world. But we have a president right now who wants to be a vassal to a less powerful country with a leader that he perceives as a powerful leader for whatever reason. And the pity of it is that Trump coming into the White House has real leverage, leverage on Russia. The central bank in Russia has hiked its interest rate to 21%. Okay, just picture what we would be like if we were doing that here. Inflation in Russia is now at 10%. Food is extremely expensive in Russia. Businesses can't pay back their loans. A lot of Russian businesses are locked into a very grim fight for survival. And at that moment, we're switching sides. It doesn't make any sense. From a policy standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. If it's something personal that Trump needs to settle with Putin, and I suspect that there is, that should be on him, not on the rest of the world. And we have mind-bogglingly switched sides in a war just as we were poised really to win this. Like, Ukraine could actually win this war if only Trump would realize that his real leverage here is to wreck Russia. And his reputation is being totally transactional. I understand. Brooke brought up China before, that some people think that this could drive a wedge between China and Russia. China and Russia have they're not allies. They have an understanding. They're both against us. But China, like Trump, is extremely transactional. It will do what is good for China, just as Trump seems to do what's good for Trump. Not America, Trump. So where we find ourselves now is at a really weird place. where Russia has failed to achieve its objectives. It is not going to wipe Ukraine off the map, not at this time, which is its objective. The territorial gains that it made, and they're holding, but the war has settled into basically World War I trench warfare. Now a lot of drones, and reports are that the drones that they're picking up in Ukraine that are flying in from Russia are by and large third rate, fourth rate drones. A lot of them don't explode. A lot of them don't reach their destinations, which kind of suggests that even their technology is falling behind. Whereas Ukraine's technology has picked up. They've already chased the Russian Navy away from Crimea, and they're winning that part of the war. Now, they have obvious structural disadvantages in terms of population and size, resources, yes, that Washington has backfilled up until now. People who are against us spending money on Ukraine need to understand that congressional districts all over the country are making a mad amount of money in the defense industry, backfilling what we're shipping to Ukraine by creating new weaponry here and ammunition here for ourselves, which, as it becomes obsolete, will be shipped to Ukraine and replaced. So the old adage, war is good for the economy, and the idea that, oh, it's too bad war is so good for the economy because people have to die. Well, no American soldiers are dying in this war. We've brought down an adversary. I'm not calling Russia an enemy because I agree with what Barack Obama said to Mitt Romney in 2012, that that's the 80s you're talking about, and we're not in the 80s. We could defeat Russia in 3 weeks if we wanted to, and there's nothing that they can do about it, and we're not even sure that their nuclear arsenal is all that. But we don't want to do that, obviously. But I don't understand why we want to have them win this war, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. That I don't understand.
No, unless, and again, I'm not going to give them nearly this much credit unless they think that they can make Russia a vassal state of the United States. To do that, you've got to have a leader that is at least on par with Putin. And I think Xi Jinping in China is on par with Putin. Trump is a wannabe. He wants to be on par with these leaders, and he's more of his rank would be, if you were to do it, rank them by ability. Putin is wrong. You got to hate what he does. You got to hate what he stands for and all that, but he's good at what he does. Xi Jinping, same thing. Trump ranks more with Kim Jong-un. The little boy who wants to get at the big table and will do anything to get himself to the big table. And for me, so this idea, if that was to be, and I honestly don't think that there's any of them out there that are smart enough to actually have thought of this, to make Russia a vassal state of us, what that really is doing is setting us up to be the vassal state of Russia because of the person at the top. And you really, it kind of, and we always go back to World War II. It kind of goes to when Hitler was meeting with Mussolini. You know who was in charge. You knew who was the real, big dog in that room. And it wasn't Mussolini. And when Trump and Putin are in the same room, you know who the big dog is. And when Xi Jinping is in that room with Trump, you know who the big dog is. And bad news, United States, it's not the American president. So to say that Trump is the most powerful man in the world today, no. He has the most powerful capacity behind him. But I'm sorry, can you imagine what Xi Jinping or what Putin could do if they were in charge of the United States? First of all, there would be no Ukraine. Probably most of Eastern Europe would be gone. Probably most of Europe. Xi Jinping, He'd have all of Asia. And the fact is that no, Trump is not the big dog. He is the little boy who, is insufficient, who wants to have a seat at the big table, and will do anything to get it, even if it's, betraying his own country.
Yeah, but by betraying his own country and by snuggling up to Putin and rolling around at his feet, Trump is unwittingly paving the way for Putin to be the head of this country, or Musk, also as unelected dictator, and then little X as Dictator X in the future, which makes me then curious to see who will come out on top, whether Vance will be smart enough to see that Musk is a genuine threat to him and will follow the Putin model of taking Musk's businesses and having an accident happen to Musk and little X to remove them, or if Musk will see to it that Vance is out of the way.
Really getting ahead.
Yeah, now we're getting into Knives Out. There was that movie that was out there, Knives Out.
Or whether Putin will
actually,
succeed.
And I've said this: if you want to watch an absolutely wonderful comedy movie, Death of Stalin.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, where you see, Stalin dies, and then kind of he didn't die, but then he actually did die, and watching all those people, Brezhnev and all those guys jockeying for power and doing all this, it is absolutely hilarious. And the guy that plays Marshal Zhukov, I can't remember the actor's name, is brilliant.
Is it Mark Strong? Is it? Oh, he's great. Yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah. Okay.
I got it. Yeah.
But because and while you're looking at
Jason Isaacs.
Jason Isaacs. That's right.
Oh my God! And it is absolutely brilliant. So that idea is a little bit of Knives Out and Death of Stalinish, as far as that. But
a lot of court intrigue, though.
A lot of court intrigue. It's kind of fun. If you kind of like that thing, it's kind of like let's go back to Henry VIII, and take all those court intrigue. Who's going to lose their head next? But no, I mean,
if there's no more free and fair elections, then that's effectively what we have. And I think for people who are playing four-dimensional chess, they will be thinking many steps ahead.
Nobody's playing four-dimensional chess.
Oh, maybe they should be.
No, none of them. They're no.
Maybe Putin is.
I think that's actually metaphorical anyway. But
yeah, no,
I don't think Putin is either.
I think Putin is.
I think Putin is very much doing what Putin wanted to do, and let's remember what that is. He wants to recreate Peter the Great's empire. Vladimir Putin has been in power too long. 22 years or whatever it is way too long for any one leader to be in power. He has lost his mind, and he is not going to be Peter the Great. He probably won't survive to see it. Hopefully he'll survive to see the end of this war, but it's certainly possible that only his death will end this war, because this is his vision and nobody else's. Nobody else in Russia has really stepped up and said, we love this war. They've lost 900,000 people, soldiers in this war. Their economy is in the tank. They are suffering tremendously, and Russians, bless their hearts, are used to suffering. So that's not that big a deal for them. But if casualties doesn't do it, then losses on the battlefield will. And if Europe can keep Ukraine going, score some major victories in battle, then Putin will find himself in trouble at home.
I mean, yeah, there's so many ways these things could go. And one of the statements you made, if there are no free and fair elections, there's a big word there, if. And if is a big word too many times. And the media does it. Academics do it. I think anybody that talks about this stuff does it. If. Not addressing what is, but what could be. And, there are a million parallel universes that could exist. I prefer to live in the one that exists today by the information that I have, not about what if this happened. And again, I think we really do tie ourselves into a pretzel saying, yeah, but if, okay, yeah, but if I don't get up tomorrow, it means I'm dead. I mean, you can't do that. And I think that that's one of the biggest problems that we've got. I think that's something that makes Trump stronger because his supporters say, yes, but if Trump can do this, instead of saying, well, yeah, wait a minute, Trump didn't do anything last time around. Everything is an expectation and an expectation of a reality that we want to see or that we believe what we want to see. And I think those are the rabbit holes I like to stay away from.
It's called magical thinking in psychiatric terms.
Okay. And I'm okay with that. But, and it's the same thing with, well, Dr. Such and Such said. Okay, whatever. The fact is that you got all sorts of people that have an opinion. I mean, come on. I mean, you just can't. I think this is the part that frustrates me when I'm out with friends, and many of the friends are big Trump supporters. Everything is an alternate reality, not based on any fact that has happened from the past or is happening at the present. Everything is based upon a expectation or a wish that fits the narrative and the reality of which they've put themselves into. And this goes right for the right, it goes for the left, it goes for everybody. There are people that I want people to be realists. I'm a realist. I accept what is in front of me. I only believe a quarter of what I hear and half of what I see. And that's the way people have to do. This is the part of critical analytical thinking that we should be promoting more. That this is how we extricate ourselves from the mess that we've allowed ourselves to get into.
I've always considered myself a realist when it comes to foreign policy also, but I think we've gone too deeply realist here, and I want to get back to a little more of the Woodrow Wilson idealism, just a little bit, so that we actually stand for something instead of just thinking about dollars and cents, or is this good for us, bad for us? Is it a sacrifice worth making? It used to be that we stood for something, and right now I don't know if it's realism exactly, but I really don't think that we stand for anything right now.
Well, no, and Scott, I totally agree. That's the problem. We don't stand for realism. And I would go back even a little bit farther than Wilson, because I always had a problem with Wilson, who always thought that Birth of a Nation was a wonderful movie and was fabulous. I would go back to Teddy Roosevelt. I would go back to where, he stood for things. And when you talk to him, you knew what he stood for. And that we've had presidents that have been that way. Now, we've had presidents that have been disengaged, Calvin Coolidge, somebody like that. We've had those disengaged presidents. But we always, you're right, we always stood for something. And I think the problem is that we're no longer realists. We don't accept the world the way it actually is. We think of it in the terms, and I'm not talking about us here, we think of it in the terms of what we want it to be and how we think it should be. And I got bad news for the American public. What the Canadians think the world should be, with the Germans, with the French, with the British, is a lot different than what we think, because all nation states look to their own interests. And their interests are always not in line with ours. And we, as a realist, we should be cognizant of that fact. And we're not.
I was looking at what Vance says and what Musk says and how each man behaves, and extrapolating forward and assuming no free and fair elections going forward, and playing out in my mind and extrapolating what a power struggle might look like, and wondering which man might have the foresight to prevail, and not liking either choice, either of the possible two victors in the scenario in my mind. That was all. I don't know if that, of course, I cannot predict the future, and I'm desperately hoping that that's not what happens. That would certainly be a worst case, or among the worst cases.
And it's okay to think in the worst case scenario.
Post-Trump. But what you're talking about, not the so-called what was it now, Kellyanne Conway, the alternative fact, which of course means nothing. That is what Freud called magical thinking. And magical thinking, from a psychiatric standpoint, is a delusion, and it does nothing. I mean, you can say whatever, this is how I want the world to be, so therefore this is how the world is, just like Trump's big lie, I won the election and the election was stolen from me, therefore that's what's real, and that really happened even though it didn't. And if you don't believe me, then you're a traitor, and everybody has to believe me, and he gets everyone to believe him, and that becomes the cult of believers, and anybody who doesn't believe is in real trouble and worthy of being murdered because they're not a true American. Or, I mean, it becomes simply insidious. That is magical thinking, because it doesn't change the fact or reality, and the person does not become aligned with reality. There's never, the truth and reality are here objectively, and what the magical thinker believes is someplace else, and never the twain shall meet, ever. And that is a psychiatric disturbance, mental delusion. And that's what is meant by magical thinking. And that's where Trump is, and many of his followers are, if they genuinely believe this stuff.
And it's also where a lot of people on the left that are, and I understand the intention is good, but there's a lot of people on the left that are in the same boat, just on the opposite side. And that's why what we need is more people that are down the middle, that are looking at the reality of what's going on, because that's the only way you're going to get back to normality, is to look at the reality. Deal with what's in front of you. Deal with what is, not what could be. If something changes, and I've said this before, if something changes that makes what could be more of a possibility, other than just talk, all right, maybe, again, be on guard. I'm not saying drop the guard. What I'm saying is that pay attention to what's in front of us, so that we can better prepare ourselves for maybe that alternate universe that none of us want. But the left does the same thing. They vilify everything right now, just like the right did when it was Biden. They vilify everything, even the smallest thing. They will try to vilify. Everybody's looking for that gotcha moment. That's not what we should be doing. What we should be doing is we should be saying to ourselves, all right, who do we really want to be? And I think that's something that a lot of Americans are being told. Fox News tells them, this is who you want to be. And they nod their heads like the little dogs that they used to be. Remember the little dogs used to have in the back of the car? They would nod their head. It was always a boxer. It would nod. That's all they do. And okay, yeah. Oh, and everything's going to be perfectly fine for you if you're that little dog that nods its head. That's what we've got to get out. We've got to get out of that mindset, and we've got to get to the point where we actually start looking at the world for what it is, not for what it could be, not for what we want it to be. There was a time when the United States was truly great, when we could look to the future and say, we want to do this. Kennedy, go to the moon and back within this decade, where we could look forward to things. We can't look forward. We're not in that position anymore. We have to look at today and tomorrow. And I'm sorry, not a whole heck of a lot farther, because things now change so quickly and are in such chaos that you just can't predict it.
Scott, do you want to add anything to Renee's question?
Oh, there was a question.
Yeah, there was a question. Yeah, Renee, I do hope that we answered your question some long time ago about NATO and whether the EU can take on Ukraine alone. Thank you for your question, and thank you again to all our listeners. And stay safe. And we will see you again tomorrow on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. JCIS is a publication of Nova Works, a scholarly repository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description.